What is an ice age? An ice age means it is so cold that when the moisture evaporates from the oceans, goes to the clouds go over the land, it doesn't rain, it snows. And the snow falls, and then it stays. So the water that had lifted up from the ocean does not return to the ocean. It accumulates on the land. And this accumulation, when it's significant and sustained, we call glaciers. Glaciers is not itself a snowfall. It is compressed snow that's basically changed state into this ice river that flows very slowly back to the ocean. But the oceans are getting drained faster than they're getting replenished.
You can launch this thing and it looks like it's going to hit Seattle and it takes a hard left turn and goes right into Chicago. And there's not a damn thing you can do to stop it and you can't predict where it's going to go.
I think the American military-industrial complex is listening to this and is saying, hold my beer.
No, I'm sure they are, but if they do it too. But the thing is, Russia does have that.
But I am pretty sure. Russia,
yeah, we do too, but it doesn't matter. Once someone launches it.
No. American defense systems are
You think that they can stop that?
Yes.
They say they can't.
Who says that?
Military experts.
I want to see their credentials and how much access they actually have. I realize how much secrecy there is in terms of how many incredible weapon systems there are, given how much money is poured into these
black ops.
Just ridiculous. America's high-tech military systems are better than anybody else in the world.
You look at this fucking Ghislaine Maxwell thing. She's the only person ever to be tried and arrested and put in jail for sex trafficking to no one. There's no list. Where's the list of the people that she sex trafficked to? Well, the problem is we know that they're heads of state, billionaires, wealthy people, famous people.
King's brother.
King's brother. Where's this list? They're not throwing any bones.
Right.
Like there has to be a large group of people that were involved in this, and there's none that are being exposed, which is quite fascinating. Because I guess if you did get exposed, if someone said, hey, blah, 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 head of this bank, we have evidence that you were having sex with underage girls, that person could say, okay, what about Bill Clinton? What about this guy? What about that guy? He was there too. And then the house of cards comes down. You know what the key is? Cooking it slowly. That's the key.
So you got like this grill or whatever.
It's a Traeger. It's a pellet grill. So I cook it from between 225 to 275 degrees, which is pretty low. And I'll cook it until it hits an internal temperature, depending upon what I'm cooking, somewhere around 120 to the maximum, like 130-ish. Then I take it out, and then I have a cast iron frying pan that's hot as a motherfucker. And I use either beef tallow or grass-fed butter. And then I sear the shit out of that with some garlic, and I throw some thyme in there, and fucking flip it over and get that good sear. And then you slice that motherfucker.
Okay, so your meat is unbelievable. I've seen it on the...
Thank you. Careful when you say that.
The Instagram.
The day before 9/11, Rumsfeld talked about trillions of dollars missing. Then a plane slams into the very part of the building where they were doing the accounting.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
This is like if you check somebody's accounting books and they just have stick figures with googly eyes drawn on it.
The fact is the exact... Did you know there was a Buddha statue once? And they found out that it was actually a mummified Buddha that they had covered with a statue. They did an x-ray on this thing, and inside of it is like an actual Buddha guy, like an actual yogi who was in a lotus position, that they did the statue around him.
That's not that weird.
Well, it's weird that they didn't know it. People had the statue. They didn't know it was a dead guy.
How old was the
inside
statue?
The body inside the statue is thought to be that of the Buddhist master Liu Quan, a member of the Chinese meditation school who died around AD 1100 How did Luquan's body end up inside ancient Chinese statue? One possibility explored is the gruesome process of self-mummification. Monks interested in self-mummification spent upwards of a decade following a special diet that gradually starved their bodies and enhanced their chances of preservation. Holy shit. So many people were calling me a bigot because of this Fallon Fox thing. It was stunning because it was so confusing to me. I'm like, I'm talking about defending a biological woman. Like, these biological women, at least 2 of them, got the fuck beaten out of them by Fallon Fox before they found out that she used to be a man. I'm like, that's not an issue to these people? And so this one woman said, she's always been a woman. And I said, okay. She impregnated a woman and got her pregnant. I go, what about then? She goes, even then.
Yeah,
so even then, she was a woman. She was a woman when she was fucking a woman with her dick and getting that woman pregnant. Like, we are in fantasy land.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Biggest dick I've ever seen in my life was a mathematician from from MIT that used to do Taekwondo with me. His name was John Ball. If you're still alive, John, my apologies. This is only a compliment. He was a very nice guy. He did Taekwondo, and he was like oddly uncoordinated, but he had a dick that people would go, like he would change in the locker room. People would go just...
Really?
What the fuck?
Really?
Yeah. Like a baby's arm with an apple in his fist, like the old Lenny Bruce line. It was gigantic. Like,
white
people
guy?
Yeah. White guy with like wacky hair. He was a mathematician, a genius, like a brilliant guy.
Did he use it?
I don't know. I mean, he had a wife that looked like she was protecting a gold mine. She would come in and like, where is he? Show up, want to make sure that no one else saw it. It was giant. I mean, it was like 12 inches soft.
What?
And he was like, you would never imagine if you saw the guy in real life. He was like a thin, wiry guy.
Those are the guys who have the biggest dongs.
Thin,
Skinny.
Yeah.
Like a baseball bat.
Yeah.
It was giant.
Plato, which is the earliest surviving reference to Atlantis, puts it this way, that his ancestor Solon visited Egypt. And we know about that visit. It's historically recorded. That visit to Egypt was in 600 BC. And there Solon claimed to have been told by Egyptian priests about this great advanced civilization that once existed, but that angered the gods and was destroyed in an enormous flood. And Solon asked those Egyptian priests, when did this happen? And they said, 9,000 years ago. That's 11,600 years ago. And it's exactly the date of what is called Meltwater Pulse 1b, one of the biggest single rises overnight in sea level that ever occurred. So if Plato made it up, it's really weird that he picked a date that is precisely a date that coincides with the latest geological evidence on cataclysmic sea level rise at the end of the Ice Age.
Is it possible for maybe somebody like me or a regular person to disappear from the grid?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's not as hard as you might think. You can disappear tomorrow, right? The first thing you do is every piece of digital technology you have that is connected to you in any way is now dead. You just let the battery run out.
Forever.
Forever. You never touch it again, starting at this moment. What you have to do is go out and acquire a new one. So you would have to acquire it essentially by theft. Now you have a technological device that you can work with. From there on, you're just doing whatever you have to do, whether you're stealing every step of the way.
Obviously, you won the Oscar for it, but there's something about these physical transformation roles when an actor does something where you realize like they're literally torturing themselves. How much did you weigh?
I weighed 135. And look, you know this. I was not torturing myself. I was militant. The hardest part was making the damn choice. It was my responsibility. If I looked like I do now, playing Ron Woodruff in Dallas Buyers Club, you are out of the movie the first frame. Oh, bullshit. He's not stage 4 HIV. I'm out. What's my job? I had to lose the weight. Once I made my mind up, I did the smart thing. I gave myself 5 months. I got on a diet where I'd have my tapioca pudding or whatever, 3 egg whites in the morning, 5 ounce of fish, a couple vegetables for lunch, 5 ounce fish, a couple vegetables for dinner, as much wine as I wanted to drink, and I lost 2.5 pounds a week like clockwork, no exercise.
As much wine as you wanted to drink?
Much as I wanted.
What kind of diet is this?
It worked.
Do you know they stopped World War I because of wolves?
No.
There was a ceasefire between the Russians and the Germans because so many of them were getting killed by wolves. They decided to get together and kill the wolves and then go back to killing each other.
No.
Yes. Mr. Beast. He's fucking great. And he gives free meals to people. Look, he's given one 2,459,098 pounds of food, 215,915 meals delivered, 111,929 individuals fed. And he does this all just out of philanthropy. He's just a good guy. He makes a shit ton of money off these YouTube videos, but he pumps almost all of the money back into his business. And he has his show translated into multiple languages, into Portuguese and Spanish, and he puts them all up on YouTube. And then he opens up these food pantries and gives people free food. He has like these Thanksgiving Day things where he gives out free turkeys. So they pull trucks up filled with turkeys and people just pull up in their car and he says, "Thank you, here's your turkey," and he hands people food. It's fucking great, man.
Imagine this. You wake up in the morning and you're Tate. Open your eyes. Bitch here, the bitch here. Move them hoes out the way. You walk to the bathroom. You're 6'3", built like Hercules. Caramel. You check the bank, full of money. You pick up a $6,000 Armani shirt and you put it on. Why the fuck are you gonna button it up? You're Andrew motherfucking Tate. You ain't gonna button up shit. I'll walk into the fucking most premier establishment you can name with my shirt unbuttoned, so every bitch in there knows I cheat.
We have evidence that somebody had the capacity to explore the world during the last ice age. One of the things I find most striking is the presence of Antarctica on ancient maps, because we didn't discover it until 1820. And yet it's on maps drawn in the 1500s with great detail, which again were based on much older source maps that have now been lost to us. They call it the Southern Land, and it's larger than it is today, but it was larger than it is today during the Ice Age. What the fuck is it doing on a map drawn in the 1500s, which we know was based on older source maps when nobody knew it existed in the 1500s? To me, the obvious answer is we are dealing with the fingerprints of a lost civilization that mapped the world and that left evidence of that mapping, which ancient map makers found and used and incorporated into their maps.
I was on the set of Fear Factor and we covered these people with bees, and then a neighboring colony, a colony that actually lived there, came and were like, "What are you guys doing here?" And the bees all flew up in the sky together and sorted it out in the sky. The guy told us, like the beekeeper, he's like, "Everybody's got to stand down. We got to back up, get out of the area." And we're like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, they have to communicate." I thought he was joking.
Let them do it, huh?
Yeah, it's like they have to talk it out. I'm like, whoa, they talk? Salvia. It's not something that people talk about a lot because it was somehow illegal. And it is one of the most mind-blowing psychedelics known to man.
For 10 minutes, yeah.
It's fucking unbelievably powerful. Ari Shaffir did some on a podcast, and he lived an alternative life for 3 months. He had a family, he had jobs, he had friends, and then all of a sudden, he came back to reality. He just went into this place and lived another life. I think he was under the ocean, too.
And then you have to wonder if that's the real one and this is the fake one.
Ah!
Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
I got a lady in my building, right? She's kind of like a Karen, right? And Joe, I love her because she does the shit I want her to do. Somebody's fucking loud. Somebody's having a crazy party. I know Danielle's got it. Like, I don't got to call nobody. Right. I might send a text like, "Danielle, are you hearing this?" Already on it. So it's like, that's my CIA. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
in 1983, the sensory deprivation tank had become a little bit of a thing in Hollywood.
This is a sensory deprivation tank. It blocks out all the external distractions that bombard our souls.
And out of nowhere, I decided to give my best friend at the time, Tree, some LSD. I said, "Let's take this LSD and we're going to rent an hour in the tank, the sensory deprivation tank, side by side." And he was like, "Okay, let's do it." So we took the LSD, we got in the tanks. I thought it was just going to be, ooh, trippy dippy. Forget it. I was 10 billion miles away in outer space. An astral plane experience.
Yeah.
Completely conscious, but no body. Just flying through the quiet vastness of space. It was almost more than we could handle. But those things are real.
One of my favorite stories came out of an all-girls university in Massachusetts where they were trying to pick a president of the student body or whatever. And one of the girls who went to that school decided that she identified as a man. So she changed her name. And I don't believe there was any hormones or anything involved. I think she just changed her name. She called herself Masculine of Center Genderqueer, changed her name to a masculine name, ran for president of whatever the hell this is.
I think it was Wellesley.
Won. Yes, I believe you're right. Won, and then was denounced by the rest of the class because now she was a white male, so she was a part of the patriarchy, and she was a part of the whole problem with society, and that she should not be allowed, or he should not be allowed to take that position, which
Well, that's a really good example.
We read it on air, and I couldn't stop laughing.
Right.
It's not something that people talk about a lot, but salvia, because it was somehow illegal, and it is one of the most mind-blowing psychedelics known to man.
For 10 minutes, yeah.
It's fucking unbelievably powerful. Ari Shaffir did some on a podcast, and he lived an alternative life for 3 months. He had a family, he had jobs, he had friends, and then all of a sudden, he came back to reality.
Oh, where am I?
55 years.
And he said that while he was out for 10 minutes, he lived like 3 months in a different world.
Jesus Christ. And then you have to wonder if that's the real one and this is the fake one.
Ah!
Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. He just went into this place and lived another life. I think he was under the ocean too. Yeah, and so he got very violent when he woke up too.
Oh, like violent? Yeah,
like, get the fuck away from me. Everybody was fucking with him.
Because it's disorienting.
Yeah, he's confused.
Because you're physically paralyzed.
Yeah. Xanax is a motherfucker. And I didn't know what a motherfucker it was until I talked to a friend who is a counselor at a drug rehab center, where he was saying that is one of the ways that people get locked back into drinking and doing drugs, is a psychiatrist will prescribe Xanax. And sober people who get on Xanax all of a sudden start drinking. He said that it's one of the most difficult drugs to get off of. And this is something that Dr. Carl Hart, who's a professor at Columbia, he said that there's 2 drugs that will kill you when you get off of them. He goes, it's alcohol and benzodiazepine. Those are the 2 that if you just quit, you'll fucking die. When did they know? When was it in the literature, the difficulty of detoxing yourself from these?
Very recently.
And when did they start being handed out?
20 years ago.
Fuck.
What are you supposed to do when a grizzly? Just pray?
Well, if it's a female grizzly, you are literally better off letting her fuck you up.
Right.
You just curl up in a ball. You're supposed to put your hand behind your neck, lay in a fetal position, and don't let her get access to your organs, because she wants to chew your organs apart.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why it's really important to have a strong backpack. If you have a strong backpack, she'll fuck up that backpack while you're on your knees, curled up in a fetal position. But that's assuming you can survive that. She's probably going to break your arms. She's probably going to snap your legs, bite into you in ways that you can't imagine the kind of force and power she can generate.
I mean,
she's trying to immobilize you. She wants to immobilize you as a threat to her children.
Oof. The stars are dead. So these purple ones are 200 milligrams. This is what, this is...
I take one of those, I'll sleep for 3 days.
This is 200
just
to
popped
go
it like
deep.
it's a milk.
Sure, who the fuck you think you're dealing with? A novice?
How many milligrams are in those?
200 in this one.
Oh, you just threw a 200 down the hatch?
I want some to go.
You got it to go. Don't worry, take one of these.
Dice, I don't know if you know, but like an effective dose is 20.
And what is he popping?
Just pop to 200. An effective dose is 20. Oh, fuck yeah. He'll drive well.
Yeah, I can't do it. I can't smoke.
I could eat 3. I could open up with 3 of these. I could open up with 600 milligrams.
That's so insane.
And just ride out the fucking waves.
You have no idea how insane that is.
I go to bed at night like a baby. I put that mask on. I sleep like a fucking baby. Sometimes I get paranoid in my sleep. And I wake up at 3 in the morning, my heart pounding. I wake my wife up.
No, I'll tell you what happened
to the
to
living
me.
room.
You know, we taught you in school nothing can travel faster than light. You may remember that from school.
Right.
We lied. Okay. Well, no, you have to parse it more carefully like a lawyer. Nothing can travel through space faster than light, but space can do whatever the hell it wants. So locally, as I told you, the radio host is at rest. They're not moving, and the other end of the galaxy, at the other end of the visible universe, and we're at rest. But the space between us is expanding, so that galaxy, like a surfer, is being carried away from us faster than light. Relative to the water, the surfer isn't moving, right? But relative to the shore, the surfer is, right?
Right.
Okay, so this galaxy is not moving relative to its local surroundings, but it's moving away from us faster than light. And so that galaxy, the light from that galaxy, is traveling through space at the speed of light. But if the space in between us and the galaxy is moving faster than light, then the poor light can never make it to us. We call that a horizon.
Wow. That guy killed 10% of the population. They find out that during that time, the carbon level, like people burning fires, decreased at a significant measurable percentage because there was less humans. They think they killed somewhere between 50 and 70 million people during his lifetime. Dude, they were lighting corpses on fire and launching them with catapults onto people's houses to burn them down. when they would siege a city, they would stay outside of the city. Thousands and thousands of Mongolians just ready to kill. Then they would capture people who fled, and they would take those people and put them on the front of the line and march them forward like a human shield. And that's how they would get into some of the castles. Since 2003, a study found evidence that Genghis Khan's DNA is present in about 16 million men alive today. What does it mean?
ADHD, and a lot of the so-called experts say it's the most heritable mental illness there is. And I say it's neither an illness nor is it heritable. Difficulty paying attention, so kind of tuning out, poor impulse control, difficulty sitting still. If I were to stress you right now, what would be your options of dealing with that?
I could either get upset or I could leave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You could fight back, flight or fight, yeah? But what if you didn't have those options?
Then you're stuck.
And now what does the brain do when you're stuck like that? It gets tunes out.
Yeah, it tunes out.
In other words, it's a coping mechanism. Infants can't help but absorb the stress of their parents.
Right.
All we could do is tune out. But when is this tuning out happening? When our brain is being developed, the most salient feature of the environment that shapes us is actually the relationship with the parents. If the parents are present and emotionally attuned, child brains develop properly. But the parents are stressed, the child absorbs the stress. What can they do with it? They tune out. And that tuning out thing gets programmed into the brain. And then 10 years later, we say, you got this disease. No, you don't. You've got a coping mechanism that's no longer working for you.
I make a prediction by the year 250. I have a bunch of predictions here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Neuroscience and our understanding of the human mind will become so advanced that mental illness will be cured, leaving psychologists and psychiatrists without jobs. In a shift that echoes the rapid conversion from horses to automobiles in the early 20th century, self-driving electric vehicles will fully replace all cars and trucks on the road. The human space program will fully transition to a space industry supported not by tax dollars, but by tourism and anything else people dream of doing in space. We develop a perfect antiviral serum and cure cancer. Medicines will tailor to your own DNA, leaving no adverse side effects. We will learn how to regrow lost limbs and failing organs, bringing us up to the level of other regenerating animals on Earth, like salamanders, starfish, and lobsters.
Yeah, because polar bears only eat meat. They're not like any other bear. They're the most predatory of all bears. I heard the most terrifying story of these explorers. They were on an icebreaker. They have a leak in their boat, and they have to literally get off the boat because the boat's sinking. Yeah. So they make their way to an ice raft, and they wait. And there's multiple hours before someone can come get them. And they see a polar bear. Oh, fuck. And they see a polar bear on a neighboring ice raft. Yeah. And he's looking at them, and he stands up, and boom, comes up in the water and pops up on the next one next to it. And they're like, oh, man. Boom, back in the water, pops up on the next one next to it until he's right next to them. He dives in the water, comes up onto their ice raft, takes one of the guys, grabs him, pulls him into the water, swims with him over to the other one, and starts eating him. Right in front of those dudes.
Holy shit.
There's a slime mold, called Fusarium polycephalum. And this slime mold is very, very good at navigating through mazes. The Japanese are so clever at this. They designed a nutrient-like maze replicating Tokyo in the Japanese subway system. With all the major cities, the nodes around Tokyo, each of those nodes had a piece of oat on them, which was a source of nutrition. And then they let the slime mold then grow. And first it grew out randomly, exploratorily, and then after about 28 hours, it reorganized itself in the most efficient way possible and reorganized the Japanese subway system in a more efficient manner than it's designed today. Thus, they said, not me, not Paul Stamets, this is a demonstration of cellular intelligence.
Whoa.
So this is the tip of the proverbial mycelial iceberg,
This is so crazy to see.
This is the bottom of the supply chain of your iPhone, of your Tesla, of your Samsung. I mean, I'm just naming those companies. Right. It's all of them, right? All of them. We're not just picking on them. And here's what you need to know, Joe, about this video. I was the first outsider to get into this mine. And that's why it's just a really short video that I was able to take. This is an industrial cobalt mine where there's not supposed to be one artisanal miner. Now, that's the term used for people who are just digging by hand as opposed to tractors and excavators. There's not supposed to be one here. That's what the story is told at the top of the chain. This mine, and I can name it, it's called Shabara. There's not supposed to be one artisanal miner here, according to the consumer-facing tech companies and EV companies buying this cobalt. Lo and behold, I walk into this place, and this is what I see. There's more than 15,000 human beings crammed into that pit.
What's your type?
I like probably volleyball chick.
A strong girl, athletic.
Maybe has a family member that can't speak English that good.
Foreigners.
Foreigner or even mentally fucking
Happy
unwell.
to be here. Oh, mentally unwell. You like that?
I know if there's somebody their family is.
Okay.
Because they're loving people. Because you can't be.
Right. Because you're compassionate.
They're called the sea nomads. They live in the Philippines. These are people who don't live on land. They live on houseboats that sail around the Pacific. For thousands of years, they've had this lifestyle. And they dive for their food. Dive. So they forage on the seabed. They are the world's best free divers. They spend hours per day underwater. They can hold their breath longer than anyone else. And they do it nothing except with weights and wooden goggles. They dive down into the seabed and forage, and they hunt. They hunt underwater with spears. Okay? They hunt underwater with spears. It's mind-boggling.
Wow.
And but they have evolved to have different spleens and different oxygen metabolism than you and I. So those among them that could survive the dives fed their families, made more babies, and now we think this happened 2,000 years ago. They're different. The ones that couldn't died.
There's a thing about archery where it's very few people can what they call command shoot. What that means is when you draw back the bow and you have your finger on the trigger, you just decide when the arrow's going to go.
Okay, sure.
Most people don't do it that way. And most people who do these big tournaments, like even the Olympics, they teach them to have a surprise release. It's a psychological trick where you're using a certain type of release. You use what's called a hinge. Where you slowly pull on the hinge and the arrow goes, but you don't know when it's going to go. Whereas a trigger, you know exactly where it's going to go. Well, there's something about knowing exactly where it's going to go where you just fucking, you tense up, you twitch, and it's hard. It's hard to keep your mind in order, especially if you're shooting in a tournament. You're in the Olympics, gold medal round. Very few people in the Olympics allow their brain to decide when the shot goes. Isn't that interesting? Doesn't caffeine just make you feel like you're not tired?
So this is a really cool mechanism. There's actually a trick to avoid the afternoon crash. It's not a trick, it's biology. But caffeine is an adenosine antagonist. It basically, as the longer you're awake, adenosine builds up in your bloodstream. It's what makes you feel fatigued. Caffeine essentially blocks the adenosine receptor, but then when caffeine wears off, the adenosine that's still around binds to that receptor and you crash. You feel really sleepy. So one thing that you can do is when you wake up in the morning, don't ingest caffeine for the first 90 minutes or so. Like really push that off so that the adenosine and adenosine receptor interactions can all take place and dissipate. Then you drink caffeine, and what you'll find is that if normally you would crash around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, you don't experience that crash anymore.
Like I always carry a pocket knife on me, right? My first day here in the States, I go to school, pull my pocket, I'm sitting in my uniform because I went to a very proper English boarding school, pull out my pocket knife, start cutting my apple. 15 minutes later, I'm in handcuffs. And I'm like, what did I do? What did I do? I literally had no idea what I had done wrong, but it's because I had a knife at school. Everybody I had ever been to school with had a knife to cut their apple. Like it was the standard thing. So here I am with police and, guns and badges, and they're throwing me in handcuffs and taking me out of the school on day one in America. And I'm like, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen. And I didn't even learn until later that day that it was because I had a pocket knife. And at no point did I think having a pocket knife was a bad thing.
So they didn't tell you?
No, they just grabbed me. There was this whole thing, the knife went flying. I was chained up and I was like, what's going on? What's going on? And they're like, you're in big trouble. And I was like, why? And, it was little culture shock things like that to me were something I'd done every day my whole life. And now I'm getting thrown in juvie for it kind of thing.